They're watching this National Assembly, and this is all intensified by famine, right? 1788, we have a year of terrible harvest. When you have excessive rain in the summertime, coupled with terrible hail that destroys a mass amount of crops, what is that going to do to the French nation? What happens to, say, the price of bread? It goes up. It doubles. So the price of bread is doubling when people could barely afford it in the beginning. And what's happening to the quality of bread? Going down. So you're paying double for terrible bread. So this terrible black bread with consolidated nastiness in it, they might do things like put sawdust in it to even try and just pull one over on people to sell more bread because there was such an absence of food. You'd have to hit it with a hammer or an axe to grind it into making something edible. And that was the best you could get at times. You can imagine, you have children. Your children haven't had anything to eat in 3 days. They're screaming, crying because their stomachs are empty and they are ravenously hungry. Something in their stomachs better than nothing. So you have bread riots in Lyon and a lot of the country, and you actually have the king's troops guarding food. If food was moving from one place to another, you actually had to have the military step in because people would raid it. Starving people would attack them on the road and try to feed themselves and their communities. So into this situation is Necker. So neck, like your neck, E-R, Necker. And he was the king's finance minister, and he was probably the people's best hope at change. He's someone who wanted to use royal money to lower the cost of bread. He wanted to start importing grain from different parts of Europe or from England. And he was about to make a change, work with the National Assembly, when, on July 11th, the king fired him. This National Assembly is new. I don't know anything about it. The king just got rid of the one person trying to feed and deal with this situation. We're going further into debt. There's nothing really coming out of the National Assembly yet, and my kids haven't eaten in 3 days. There's pamphlets being thrown around at this time, one entitled, "What No One Has Said Yet," saying that this new government, their first and foremost issue should be food. The people are starving, right? And this intense situation is what we're going to get the storming of the Bastille. So this was a medieval castle built in the 1300s where you have knights, lords, true Middle Ages, that was turned into a political prison. The walls were 80 feet high of thick stone type bricks. You had 8 massive towers, easy to defend, and it would have towered over the community around it. You would have seen the Bastille from far away. And you can think about what message that sends. You have this big stone prison looming over everyone, a power symbol that if you mess up, if you mess with the king or the monarchy or the nobility, you're going to disappear in the middle of the night. No one's ever going to hear from you again, and you are going to be in the dungeons of the Bastille. So when people hear that Necker is dismissed, people start flipping out. Here's the one guy that was going to help bring reform to feed my children, to deal with starvation, to deal with famine, and he's gone. He was kind of like the hero, the people's champion. So crowds start forming in Paris. First 5,000, then 10,000, then 15,000, then 20,000, right? And they start doing things like they raided the wax museum. They took Necker's sculpture that was out of wax. They start parading around the city, chanting his name, having parades for him. Some guy fires a pistol in the middle of the street and gives a rousing speech. This Camille de Saint-Molins. I probably butchered that. In fact, I know I butchered that name. But he said, to arms, I call on my brothers to seek liberty. Look for arms, look for grain. Do what you must." And they form a citizens' kind of militia. If those 30,000 troops come here, they better be ready for a fight. There's some fake news going around, too, that the National Assembly has been thrown in the Bastille, that the aristocrats are working against them. And on July 14th, what ends up happening is they decide we are going to do something. We're going to arm ourselves. We're going to prepare. They captured a veterans hospital, and in this veterans hospital, they seized 40,000 guns, and they also seized 12 cannon, heavy cannon. Though they had no means to fire them or shoot them, because what was not there? Gunpowder, right? So what makes it actually go bang and work was not there. The Royalists had a good sense to move the gunpowder in the middle of the night to a secure location, and they brought it to, dun dun dun, where do you think they brought it? The Bastille. People get word of that, so that everyone says, "A la Bastille, let's go." Yes?
How many guns did they take?
40,000. So enough for an army, right? Yes.
How many cannons did they take?
12. 12. So they start surrounding the Bastille. They're surrounding it. And if we look at the way it's built, right, the neighborhood grew up around it and actually built their homes, their structures, right up against the walls of the Bastille. So you had these men go on top of a perfume shop roof. They climb the wall of the Bastille, and then they end up cutting the pulleys to the drawbridge. The drawbridge comes smashing down, ends up crushing someone to death right in front of the crowd. You have people then exchanging fire with the people defending the Bastille. The Bastille was defended by roughly 30 Swiss men as well as 80 French veterans. And a small skirmish ensues. People are trying to get over this drawbridge. They're trying to get into the Bastille and to the keep. They're doing things like putting wagons right on the drawbridge, setting it on fire, trying to use a smoke screen. The defenders do a great job of holding them off until some royalist troops defect to the other side. Some royalist troops facing starvation, feeling camaraderie for their fellow citizens, show up. They bring a few cannon, and they end up firing into the Bastille, forcing the defenders to surrender. After which, the Bastille is raided, the prisoners are set free, and they're also going to do some pretty horrendous stuff to some of the defenders and its commander. So one of the things they do after they storm the Bastille is they take the commander, a man by the name of Delaunay, and they're going to maybe bring him to court, bring him to trial, and they're ripping him through the streets of Paris. This crowd is pushing him, they're shoving him, they're attacking him, they're throwing things at him. And finally, he's like, "Let me die!" And he kicks one guy in the groin, tries to get away. This guy's hovered over, and then someone comes up behind him, stabs him. Someone else comes up behind him, stabs him. Someone shoots him in the side. Another person shoots him. And you have a frenzy ensue in which mob violence takes place, and they mutilate the commander of the Bastille in the streets of Paris. Stomp him to death. Beat his face, horrible things, so that he's no longer recognizable. After which, the man who was kicked in the groin was given the esteemed honor of decapitating the commander, removing his head. He takes out a small pocket knife and began slowly sawing off the commander's head, as legend states. Supposedly he took a break midway through, took a little alcohol and some gunpowder, so he would have the fire in his belly in order to do it. And you can see in this image that Commander Delaunay is mutilated in the streets, left there headless, lifeless, as the Parisian mobs parade his head on a pike through the streets of Paris. Whew! We went from National Assembly working with the king, slow, small, incremental change, to violence, mob rage, mob chaos in an instant, right? And now the chaos, the violence is going to escalate from here. And you'll see from your reading how the French Revolution radicalizes, that we'll talk about next time. An interesting side note, you don't have to write this down. As soon as they finished storming the Bastille, they actually start to dismantle it. And when they dismantle it, they take the huge bricks that were part of this fortress prison and they turn them into relics of freedom. So that some people carved mini Bastilles out of the bricks and sent them around as little mementos. And they're still in France to this day. Here's a few. This one's really good. I like that one a lot. And then they do things like this. This is the Bastille key. This was a gift from Marquis Lafayette to who? Anyone know? What?
The king?
Not the king. Yeah.
Ben Franklin.
Not Ben Franklin. A Virginian. Our first president. George Washington. Were you going to say it, Abby? I'm sorry. George Washington. So, if you go into Mount Vernon through the front door, you walk through the front door, you turn left, this is what you'll see. It's the Bastille key. Marquis de Lafayette said to Washington, you are the father of independence, of Enlightenment values, of American liberty, of this Enlightenment experiment of self-government and self-determination. We in France are now keeping that tradition going. We're bringing it a step further and bringing it to Europe, getting rid of monarchy and old tyrannies. And it's fitting that you should have this present. The man Thomas Paine, who wrote the famous pamphlet Common Sense and helped save Washington in the Revolution, ended up bringing it across the Atlantic and presenting it to him. And now it's at his home in Mount Vernon in Virginia.